Hello everybody, I'm back. So Sue and the crew has asked me to come back into ND Graphics here today, and we're going to work on a couple of key points on a car. We've had a lot of feedback on our last couple of videos about how to get in a little bit more detailed in the mirrors, door handles, bumper corners, things like that. So I thought I'd come in today and work with a couple of new films, as well as just kind of break down a few of the techniques for you. What I've got here is an Audi, and we're going to be doing a mirror cap here. A lot of people ask me, where do I start? How do I begin this? So I'll kind of start right from cleaning and we'll work right to the finished product. What I have here right now is isopropyl alcohol. So first thing we do is wash the vehicle, soap and water, and then we're going to follow it up with a really good alcohol bath, okay? We're going to wipe this down and make sure we wipe up any contaminants before the alcohol can flash off the mirror. Once this is completed, we're going to evaluate the mirror. What type of mirror is it? How much coverage is it? Is there any detail work I have to do ahead of time? I don't know if you can see this on this mirror, but this mirror has a very deep reveal that's in the face here. So what I've had to do is, before I start, I've had to lay in a small inlay inside that deep reveal, and then I've laid knifeless about 1/8 of an inch in, so there's got a really nice fine overlap once I do the mirror cap. Trying to push that deep reveal in and making it hold for warranty purposes, it will never last. So laying in a small inlay and hiding your overlap deep into that valley will look a lot better and will last much longer in that area. So I've done this and I've sort of prepped this ahead of time. Now I'm going to walk you through what the next step is. So we're using a 1080 product today. This is the 1080 matte blue metallic, okay, the 3M wrap film. Before I start to lay film though, we really recommend a product called Primer 94. Most of you guys as installers have seen this. This has been in the automotive industry for a very long time. This is what holds factory body side moldings on vehicles. A lot of the companies like Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors will apply this to the vehicle and apply the molding to that vehicle. That stays there for the life of the vehicle. So what 3M has done is they've sort of brought it from the automotive OEM division and they brought it into commercial wraps about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and we now use this on wrapping vehicles. How it works is it's a primer compound that's left behind those edges that the adhesive really locks to for long term. A lot of people will ask my brother Vaughn and I, what do you prime? Do you prime everything? Not really. I only prime things that I know are going to stay on for more than 1 year. This is a long-term product. If I'm wrapping cars that are on for a month, a weekend, or up to a year, I'm not going to prime it, okay? But if I need to put a 3 to 5 year warranty to a vehicle, I'm going to take the extra time to prime all those high traffic and high failure areas. And mirrors are definitely one of those. So what it is a little ball bearing in it. I shake this ampule of primer. It's a cardboard sleeve wrapped around glass. I'm going to crush it. And this is going to flow into this bristled 1/4 inch end on it. I'm going to apply that to the finished edge. Now, with this product, everybody, less is more, okay? You don't need to smear this on 2 inches. Because remember, when the removal of the vehicle happens, this needs to be cleaned off after. Also, another thing about primer that a lot of installers don't understand, they'll do a mirror like this and they'll go around their edges and then they'll let it dry for 5 minutes. And then they'll come back and do it a second time. And then they'll do it a third time. And they think by layering primer, it's actually going to make it stronger. That actually is false, okay? When you start to layer primer, what happens is you create a profile. So 2 things happen. You start to see that profile under your wrap, which looks ugly on your edges. And secondly, layering things start to get weaker. So as you layer and layer and layer, things will shear because now you've created that higher profile. So when it comes to Primer 94, less is more. 1 bead, 1/4 inch on the finished edge, 1 time. That's it, okay? Once I've done that, let it dry 5 minutes to flash off any of that solvent and it'll leave that solid primer compound. Once 5 minutes passes, we're going to start to install. Now, a couple of things before I get started while I'm letting this Primer 94 flash off is this is what we call a double compound. Anything that's moving in 2 different directions, whether it be a hood, whether it be a tailgate of a car or a van or a mirror, this wants to roll kind of left or top to bottom and right to left, as well as sometimes bringing over that extra stress is going to create a lot of tension or memory in that film. Before I get started though, I'm going to break that down for you a little bit. So, a lot of installers make the mistake of starting up high and they're going to transfer all that energy to the bottom. or they'll start over here and they're going to transfer all that energy to one side. The problem with double compounds is when you do that, you now run the risk of bringing a lot of memory to one edge. So if I start on a nice flat area, this is never going to fail. You have zero memory there. But if I all of a sudden heat it and just stretch it over to one side, I'm now bringing 100% of that tension to one edge, and this is where you start to see a lot of fingering start to happen. Same if I start really high. This has no memory, but by the time I get it down to my finished edge, you're transferring all the energy of that double compound from zero, and you're now bringing it 100% tension to there, and you'll start to see over time a lot of fingering pulling back. So you have to think of double compounds as being quarters or sections. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of hit my high. I'm going to bring 1/4, 1/4, kind of 1/4 and 1/4. I want to break up the tension of that double compound mirror into equal sections. Okay, I'm not going to just pull from one edge all the way to another. So that's dried long enough now. By the way, if you're ever trying to hurry up drying, 3M recommends even taking a heat gun and just quickly passing it over the primer just to ensure that any solvents have flashed off. And what you should be left behind is a very light, kind of milky compound behind. It is very strong, and as I mentioned, just that 1/4 inch is all you're going to need. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm ready to wrap. I kind of have a funny quirk about myself. My brothers are kind of the same. I like to read the liner, and I'm always trying to move the liner in direction of the wording, just to make sure that there's no fluctuations in sheen or in pattern, okay? A lot of people look at this and go, well, what difference does it make whether I put it on like this, or I put it on like this, or I put it on like this? Well, believe it or not, guys, when it's manufactured in one direction. So we should really try to wrap cards the same way. So when I'm pulling the liner, I'm sort of looking at the liner, and I'm going to lay this in direction, the same direction I would lay the side of the car or the hood, okay? I want to make sure that this is all, the sheen looks the same. We've had a lot of customers over the years call us and say, you know, I did every panel separately, but my door seems to be a little off. Well, that's because they've installed it upside down. So they have that different shimmer to it, especially on a lot of these metallics. So again, just a little hint for you. I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to apply that in that direction. Now, the nice thing about 1080 is it does have the positionability. You notice that it does slide for me. It's not hooking up. This is a pressure activated adhesive. So it's going to wait for me to activate that, all right? So as I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to do is hit it on the high. Now you'll see some instructors like to pre-stretch theirs in a window, or they'll pre-stretch it somewhere and then apply it. That's okay if you're really good, but I find that I like to watch the film and sort of only give it the minimum stretch that it needs. So I'd rather break it into quarters, and then I'm going to work those in equal sections. So I know I'm going to work kind of this way, I'm going to work this way, I'm going to work this way, and I'm going to work this way. All right? So this is where your heat gun comes into effect. Also, before I do this, you notice that my piece is quite big. I don't cheat out on film. If you just have a small piece of film that barely covers the mirror by 1 inch, that little bit of stress, when you see me heat, you don't have enough. You're going to add a lot of memory there. So that's why I leave myself a good 6 to 8 inches around the mirror so that I can make sure that my memory or my stretch is over a larger area. I'm not just stretching over a small area. So you'll notice what I mean in a minute. As I heat this whole section, okay, notice my other hand is just sort of holding it. I'm letting the heat gun relax the film. And I'm going to take this larger piece, I'm going to spread, I want equal, and I'm just going to bring it over. So you notice I'm not over pulling it. I don't want to pull this so hard that it's changing the color or really distorting it, okay? I'm going to work to this corner. Now what I can do up here, relax, see it flatten, I'm not pulling it, okay? And I'm just going to lay this 1/4 down. So I don't worry about any memory there because it's very little. I've taken the memory out, and now I've just pushed it down to the primer, okay? Now I'll work down here in this corner, relax. I'm going to just kind of very gently spread, okay? Seal, 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 seal. Now, this is key. You notice the direction that my thumb is moving. So many installers, for some reason, want to work this way. When you work this way, you're going to create kind of a tunnel here. And this is where a lot of installers make the mistake. And their only way of fixing that is to just superheat it and stretch it, okay? That's the incorrect technique. What you want to do is relax this larger area. And without pulling, again, I'm just holding the tension. I'm working back, 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 okay? What I'm doing is I'm creating that cross tension so that I don't create a pocket. So by the time I get to the end of my mirror, okay, there's no memory here, or very little, minimum, okay? 1080 wrap films can be pulled up to 130% without failure. So as you notice, I'm not pulling 130% there. It's technique. You're sort of sealing, you're working 1/4, then you're warming, and you're working back to kind of pull that bag out and work down to my primer edge at the bottom. So now I've kind of done half of my mirror. I'm fairly happy with that portion. I can trim away a little excess here, and I'll come back later and do my final trim. Mirrors are one of those things too, guys. It takes a lot of patience, and every mirror is different. As you guys probably will notice, you'll say, well, that's a fairly decent mirror. But what I'm trying to, or a fairly easy mirror, what I'm trying to show you here though is just technique, okay? This works for all mirrors. If you're doing something that's going around in all 4 directions, you really need to start in the center and work those 4 equal sections. So I move on to the back side. Again, I want a larger area to pull from, okay? I'm gonna spread. Again, I'm not overstretching. I don't know if you can see how hard I'm pulling, but I'm just kind of tacking. I'm gonna work this section down into the primer. Relax it again. Now, I absolutely love doing this kind of stuff, mirrors. It's one of those things that, at the end of the day, you finish the whole vehicle wrap, you're coming to do your handles and your mirrors, and this is sort of one of those things that I absolutely enjoy sort of not fighting with, but more or less tweaking it, making it work. And it does take a couple of times sometimes. There's days where I feel like I've been beaten, and then you make it work, and it's fantastic to be able to do that. So you notice that I'm pulling up, and I'm pulling down, okay? Every once in a while, I'm just relaxing. I don't want to overstretch it. This is Amanda's car, so I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. I don't need Amanda calling me back in a couple of weeks to say that her mirrors are starting to pop or fail. That extra 5 minutes right now to just take my time and to make sure it's just technique. Notice I'm pulling away up, up, up. And this one, I want to be pulling up, up. And then here, when I warm it, I can then work down. There we go, okay? So none of the color is distorted. Okay, I don't have any what we call bruising. Okay, I'm to my primer. I feel real confident about that. I can then go around it all, check it all. Having comply and control tack, re-squeegee, re-squeegee. Go over all the edges with my thumb to ensure that all that's pushed to the primer. And now I can let it cool for a second before I start to trim. Now that's also a really important part, guys. A lot of people want to start trimming when it's hot. That's actually not a good thing to do. Trimming film when it's hot, it will snag on you, okay? Trimming should be done when the film is cooled down a little bit. So we'll let it sit a minute, make sure we're happy with it, make sure there's no discoloration, make sure we don't have any kind of wrinkles or flaws in it. And then once it's cooled, we'll start to trim. Okay. Before I trim too, one thing I like to mention, a lot of people ask us about sort of this micro scratching that happens. You know, a lot of installers use different types of squeegees. I've got a couple in my bag, but they use a soft side to hook and loop. The knifeless tape now has a new edge. Some guys like to use a wet edge, felt, satin, whatever works for them. But you need one edge that's fairly soft and non-scratching, and then obviously a harder edge for working in tight areas around handles and around areas of chrome, okay? Now, once this is cooled down, I can start to trim. Now beforehand, I sort of popped this cap out a little bit because I wanted for Amanda to kind of tuck under here for her mirrors, so when it popped back, it was completely covered, okay? You gotta be careful when you do that. You don't wanna just start reefing and pulling and breaking clips. So a lot of guys will use a sweet stick or some type of really soft Lexan to sort of slip underneath and sort of slide their mirror cap to pop it out of the plastic holder. So I've already done that ahead of time. So now I can start to finish up some trimming here. Okay, so again, I mentioned earlier I have knifeless there. So I'm gonna trim it a little bit further than my knifeless because it will roll down and I wanna make sure that I cover. So right now is I'm just kind of doing a dry cut. Perfect. So I'm just sliding to the lower part because again, I've separated it so I have a bit of room there so I can trim it to the lower side. Weed away my excess and tuck in to my edge. One thing I do love about ND Graphics here is any new products that come in, anytime that we're trying out a new tape or new film, they always like to test things. They don't just send it out to you guys as customers without making sure that the industry is happy with it. They really do like the feedback of different installers as well as printers on different films and how they react. And that's what's nice about us coming in today. We can sort of work with a couple of new films, with new knifeless tapes, and we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about the new 3M MC adhesive line that's coming out as well. So I'm just popping this up off my knifeless tape, and now I can relax it again, take that memory out. Now, I'll kind of turn the mirror so you guys can see a little better. This is a high corner here. So many guys or girls get wrinkles in here, okay? Because what they want to do is just push straight in. You have to remember, when you have a high apex corner like that, you have to break it up equally. So as I warm it, I'm going to work kind of 50 down, and then I'm going to work 50 up, okay? I want to spread that corner, okay? I'm not just going to wrinkle it. As I warm it, okay? You spread up, and you spread down. You're breaking up that tension equally. Now my knifeless tape is right there, so I'm not too concerned about, there we go. That's gonna cut a nice straight line now, because that's tucked in nice and smooth. So again, break down, break up. Okay, now I can go to the rest of it. Relax it. Roll it in there with your hard edge. Roll it in there to your knifeless. Don't tent and push. Tenting and pushing causes memory, and memory causes failure. And as you're learning as a young installer, that is the biggest thing, is really learning how all PVC films, and it doesn't matter what film you're working with, they all have a memory. So you want to make sure that you are putting the least amount of memory to film that you can. And that goes for all films. I can't just speak of 3Ms because they're all the same. PVC or polyvinyl chloride, they all have a memory to shrink back to its original state. So in that case, that wants to be flat. It wants to come back to a flat area. So again, we want to make sure that's rolled in, and then I can finish up with my knifeless tape here in a second. The knifeless product I'm going to use here in a minute was a product that was developed out of the West Coast, and 3M has purchased it in the last little bit, and I think they're up to 8 different lines now to really help installers not have to cut on a vehicle. The reason why it was developed was the gentleman that developed this line, his installers unfortunately had cut a few cars in a year, and he was doing repaints, and that really bothered him. So he developed this knifeless line to apply ahead of time to ensure that you're not putting a knife to someone's $50,000, $60,000 car. It works amazing, especially if you're only doing wraps every, one a month or a couple a month, and you're not really educated on your knife weight and using a knife on a vehicle. How knifeless works, it's a very thin Kevlar line. There's different ones. There's a steel one, I think, for PPF now that's just come out. If you ever get a chance to take Phil Aquin's knifeless training as well as his certification, it's a fantastic course to take here in Canada. Phil's one of the top preferred installers, and he also goes around and demos knifeless right now for ND Graphics. So absolutely a good course to take if you get a chance. How it works, guys, that Kevlar line, you're just going to fold it over on itself, pinch down, right on the edge, and pull, okay? Always pull in direction of your cut. You never pull sideways. Imagine doing a double hood stripe on a car and you're pulling sideways. It's gonna start to chatter on you. So it's always in the direction of your cut in a smooth, consistent pull. remove my excess. Okay. So you notice as I pull my excess away, the left side of my transfer tape is from the knifeless is coming with it. But very important that the piece that's under the adhesive side comes out. Obviously, when 3M bought this company, they really are concerned about anything that touches their adhesive. So make sure that this piece comes out. As you can notice, it's really hard to see it there once it's underneath. But don't forget about it. It's extremely important that final edge be covered, to be pulled out and then re-squeegeed. So I remove that. And again, that's kind of my hidden seam there now. Really love this tape. I've worked with a lot of young installers that have got themselves into some really deep pickles trying to cut things on someone's car, you know? Imagine a Ferrari that you're putting a hood stripe on, or a Viper, and you're cutting your knife on it. Extremely difficult. Okay, so once that's all pushed down, we'll do some final trimming. Beautiful. Okay, re-squeegee. That's my finished mirror cap. Now, 3M does believe in a dwell time. So most vehicle wraps, all acrylic adhesives need 12 hours to dwell. So allowing a customer to take this mirror 20 minutes after you're finished, guys, is not really a smart idea. All adhesives are slow-moving liquids, and they need to flow and dwell over 12 hours at room temperature to create a full bond to that substrate or that terrain of the substrate. So again, try to build these times into your print shops. We see a lot of fingering pulling back simply because you're finished, the customer takes it, it goes out into the cold, it's hitting all the elements, and that adhesive hasn't had time to fully cure or bond to that substrate. So build that 12 hours in for vehicle wraps, mirrors, bumper corners, handles, areas like this. Next day, you're gonna notice they've now completely bonded, and you can give your customer a nice long-term warranty. All right, we're gonna move on to the next thing, and I hope everybody enjoyed that.